Hello and welcome back to Eat Sleep Boxing Repeat. Delighted to be joined tonight by Elliot to discuss the upcoming huge Savannah Marshall, Claressa Shields undisputed middleweight fight. Firstly, Elliot, how are you tonight?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Ern. Really good, mate. Really looking forward to this one. Interested to see if we agree, we disagree. But yeah, looking forward to breaking this fight down for sure.
Like I say, such a huge fight for undisputed status. We'll be live on Sky Sports. For anyone watching the video, looking to watch it, the Sky Sports link will be in the description below. So we'll get straight into this. I think the major talking point that's been in the build up so far is the amateur fight that took place all those years ago. Um, it was a fight Savannah Marshall won. Since then, Claressa Shields went on to have one of the most decorated amateur careers of any boxer, male or female. Whereas Savannah Marshall slowed down really in the amateurs and didn't do too much else after that. Um, so coming to you, Elliot, do you think the amateur fight will play a role in the within the pro ranks? It was such a long time ago. They've both developed, they've both evolved. Um, so what's your thoughts on the actual amateur fight, and will it play a part at all in this unification fight?
Um, I'm not too sure, to be honest. Ern. I think on one hand, it was a long time ago. I think Claressa Shields was 17 when that fight happened. On the other hand, I think it could possibly play on Claressa Shields' mind that she's only ever lost to one person, and that's Savannah Marshall. And here we are, 9 years later, and Savannah Marshall's clearly a top contender, whether Claressa Shields is going to admit that or not. So I think I think it could play a part. Not a major part, no, but I just think that when you know someone's already beaten you, amateur or pro, you kind of there's a chance that person's got your number. But it's a tough one. It's a really tough one to think about, to be honest.
I do agree with you on it's a tough one and it will play a small part. I think what Clarissa Shields has done since then, I don't necessarily think it'll be the way the actual fight played out. I think, like you say, it's the mental side of it. The only person that's ever beat her, she's stepping back into the ring. I mean, I know it was a long time ago, like we said, but there's always going to be that back of your mind, no matter how headstrong you are, there's always going to be that tiny, tiny bit in the back of your mind that's going to be thinking, what if? Can
Yeah,
the same happen again? Um, since then, they fought a couple of the same fighters within the pro ranks. One thing I wanted to touch on was we all know Savannah Marshall has a lot of power in her hands, whereas Clarissa Shields is more of a points fighter. So Clarissa Shields went the distance with both Hannah Rankin and I think it was Herman's, whereas Savannah Marshall got them both out two fights within 10 rounds. Do you think, again, sort of two questions in that, do you think that will play a part in Clarissa Shields' mind, the fact that Savannah Marshall has stopped people she couldn't? And do you think Savannah Marshall has the power to stop Clarissa Shields?
I think that Claressa Shields knows the sort of fighter that she is. She's never going to be, she's never going to be a big puncher. She's always going to win the vast majority of fights by points. There's nothing wrong with that. And yeah, look, I think Claressa Shields, she was there for Marshall's last fight in Newcastle back in April. I think it was a third round KO against Femke Hermans. She would have seen how brutal that was. She was ringside for that fight. So I think she will be she'll be very aware of it. I don't think Shields would have fought someone with Marshall's power because that person simply isn't available. Unless Shields is going to start fighting men, she's not going to experience that. It's as simple as that. Um, in my opinion, look, it's quite simple with this fight. If it goes the distance, Shields will kind of end up running away with it, I think. And the way that Savannah Marshall, look, I'm 95% sure the way that Savannah Marshall wins this fight is by stoppage. It's hard to see Savannah Marshall winning this fight on points. Shields has gone the distance so many times in her pro career. It's what Shields is best at. She's got more experience down the stretch. So yeah, and I think also one thing about Claressa Shields is that she's 12 fights into her pro career. She's barely lost a round. So that says something about how good she is. If she's achieved all she's achieved with barely losing a round, that's extremely impressive. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it. Interested to hear your thoughts as well.
No, I do tend to agree with you on that. I think you can see the way Peter Fury's got Savannah Marshall fighting. It's the Fury style, it's the boxing move, it's the in and out. She's even got the little, Tyson where when he sort of walks, his hands just sort of do their own thing. And Savannah Marshall, I've noticed she's got a tendency to do that now. So she's definitely, you can see she trains with a Fury. That's clear to see. And I agree on the stoppage. I think Savannah Marshall hasn't fought an operator like Shields, who is prepared to go the distance, is going to box and move, and won't necessarily be too worried about the power coming forward. And then flip side of the coin is, like you say, Claressa Shields never going to fight someone with the power Savannah Marshall's got. It's quite freakish within women's boxing for someone to just be dropping people left, right, and centre like she is. She's got fists of dynamite. It's brilliant to watch. And I do think Savannah Marshall is helping women's boxing being so powerful. I do think Savannah Marshall will stop Claressa Shields, but I agree that is the only way she beats her. If it goes the distance, when it gets over 4, 5, as it gets into 6 and 7, I think we'll see not necessarily Savannah Marshall panicking, but you'll see that the look to the corner as in, I need this sort of thing, because it's into her territory. She'll be happy with the fight going the distance. And an unhappy Savannah Marshall is exactly what Claressa Shields is going to be wanting. The interesting thing that hasn't been talked about a lot is what's next for either opponent. I think because within the middleweight division, these two, they're top, simple as that. And there hasn't really been much talk of what the next step is. So it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on, for either fighter, whether who wins, whoever loses, what their next step should be.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say it now. I think there's a good chance there will be a rematch.
Yeah.
Here we are. The fight's happening in September. It could be a rematch 5-6 months later, just because it's a big fight. It's the biggest fight for both fighters. So unless Claressa Shields does a shutout victory or Savannah Marshall stops Shields in the first couple of rounds, I think we will see a rematch in this fight. And part of that reason because I don't think there aren't big names in that division when you take away those two. And I'm not just saying that because it's women's boxing. That's just kind of the truth. I've kind of done a bit of research, and there are fights there, and obviously whoever wins will be undisputed, and whoever they fight, it's still a big fight, but it's not going to be half the fight that it would be with a rematch against the other person. I've just had like a side thought, and that thought is it might be a little bit out there, but we have kind of a couple of British contenders in the division below. Natasha Jonas is a world champion. I think in a week, by the time this video goes out, she could be a unified world champion. She fights for another belt in Liverpool on September the 3rd. Terry Harper is also campaigning at super welterweight now. Everyone loves the domestic rivalry. I wouldn't rule out maybe next year the winner of this fight. Maybe one of those girls moves up in weight. I think I can imagine that happening. If I know it's not maybe their natural weight, but if the opportunity is there to fight Savannah Marshall or Claressa Shields for the undisputed middleweight championship,
I know
you're going to take it. So yeah, bit of a long-winded answer. So apologies for that, but yeah, it's a bit of a, I don't know. It's an interesting point, and it's maybe says something about where women's boxing is. That we've got this middleweight division, yet there aren't bundles and bundles of names, which there are in the men's game.
Well, like you say, super welter, there's good stock within Britain. I was looking myself because Savannah Marshall, when she started campaigning, she had fought up at 168. She won, I think it was a WBA international in a third or fourth fight up at 168. I know up at 168 you've got Christina Hammer. You've got, I think it's Emma Kozin, but again, other than that, there's not too many big names. The Hammer fight, she's always had a relatively big name within women's boxing. So I think, like you say, that is a possibility. Again, Claressa Shields, I do think she's potentially got more options because the likes of Natasha Jonas, Terry Harper, etc., can step up. I do also think there'll be a rematch, and then I think Shields has more options in terms of even if she loses this fight, say she loses a rematch in 5, 6 months' time, Claressa Shields has fought at super welterweight when it used to be like known as light middleweight. Um, so she's actually fought at that weight on a few occasions. So she can, and for instance, she could drop down. Whether Natasha Jonas, etc., wouldn't have to step up, they could say, "Look, I'm the champion. You want the big fights again. You're not going to get them while Savannah Marshall either goes up in weight or just reigns dominance really in the middleweight." So she could actually drop down. So in a weird sense, I think Shields has more options regardless of the outcome of the fight. Um, in the fact of she can easily drop down the weight, whereas Savannah Marshall wouldn't be able to drop down. She'd need your Jonas, your Harpers, etc., to come up to her. So yeah, I do think Shields has more options. So it's really intriguing to be fair, because I do think this fight is doing a lot for women's boxing. To have an undisputed fight headline in the O2 in London, it's only a good thing. Again, long-winded answer, but
Yeah.
just I think Shields just has more options. It's a weird one. But
Mm.
regardless of the outcome, I just see Shields having more options due to being able to drop in weight.
Yeah.
Um, but like we say, it's such an intriguing fight. It's got plenty of people talking. Women's boxing for that fight week. Women's boxing is going to be reigning supreme for that week, which is brilliant. Hopefully, it helps more female boxers come through the ranks and also gets more females interested in boxing. As like we say, it can only be good. So Elliot, thank you for joining me tonight. Thoroughly enjoyed the chat. Again, huge fight. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, no worries at all, mate. I've enjoyed it. The only I know we normally do predictions on this video, but I'm struggling with this one. Did
Yeah,
I hear you say earlier that you were edging towards a Marshall KO?
I am.
Yeah.
It's not when we had the chats within ourselves and when we were
Mm.
putting the tweets out and whatnot for the Usyk AJ, I was like I was firmly in Usyk's camp. I think towards the fight I was over 90% towards Usyk, whereas this one it's the old, can she knock her out?
Mm.
Will she catch her, or will Shields dance around her for the full distance? So I'd probably say I'm gonna have to be boring. It's probably 51-49.
Yeah, yeah,
Savannah Marshall. When
yeah,
it got announced, I sort
yeah,
of jumped the gun and I was neck on the line. I was like, Marshall knocks her out. It's done. It's
yeah.
dusted. It's simple. But sitting down and actually having to think about it as time goes on, I have to be boring. I do have to go 51-49, sort of literally just over the Marshall side of the fence. What about yourself?
Yes, like I'm looking forward to, as you mentioned there, like one point is Marshall hits very hard
Yep.
and Claressa Shields um could possibly drop down in weight to super
Yeah.
welterweight after this fight. So those two mixed together kind of says to me when they're in the ring, what's going to be the weight difference, what's going to be the
Yeah.
size difference.
Very good
I'm
point.
really looking forward to the press conferences, or more to the way in the press conference and seeing, looking at the size difference, how much bigger is Savannah Marshall than Claressa Shields, and if there is a size difference there, and we know what sort of puncher Savannah Marshall is, then I think that could be crucial in this fight. I think one thing that's intriguing is that we don't know if Claressa Shields can take a shot from Savannah Marshall because Claressa Shields hasn't really been in trouble before.
Yeah.
And like you, it's such an intriguing one. I feel like in boxing, genuine 50-50 fights rarely happen, like genuine ones when people like me and you can't decide.
Yeah.
And the odds are so short. But if I had to give a prediction, I would agree with you on a Marshall KO. I would say rounds 4 to 6 is what
Yeah.
my gut's telling me,
That's what I was
just
looking at.
purely for the fact that Savannah Marshall I believe, has freakish power. Her I've seen her fight twice, once early in her career at York Hall, once in her last fight, and that that knockout in her last fight against Femke Hermans did not look normal for a female heavyweight.
Yeah.
But it's a tricky one. It's a really tricky one, and I can't wait. What if you had to pick a round? What's your gut feeling?
My initial round was 5. I think it can't go late. We have so many of these fights, like we say, this is why it's brilliant. We have so many of these fights with the men's where it's, if it goes late, fighter A wins, fighter B has to stop them within the first half of the fight.
Yeah.
This is one of those where we could be completely wrong, but off the basis of what we've seen from both fighters, it has to be an early Savannah Marshall knockout or Claressa Shields. We're probably talking 3 or 4 rounds, fairly comfortable.
Yeah.
Dependent on judges. But yeah, it's got to be round 5 for me.
The more I think about it, the more I think that the first couple of rounds, I think both will be quite tentative. I think Shields won't want to face Savannah Marshall's power. Well, she won't want to face it at all, but she especially won't want to face it early on in the fight. So I think the first 2-3 rounds could be quite tentative. And then I think rounds 4 to 7, Marshall needs to get to it then. I think if it gets to the end of round 7 and Marshall's not stopped her, I expect Shields, due to her experience in the later rounds, due to her experience going the distance, I would expect Shields to win. So if we get to round 7 and the fight isn't over, I then expect Shields to win on points. So yeah, I would. If you're saying round 5, I'll go round 4 just to be annoying. But yeah, we'll see. But I'm looking forward to seeing everyone else's predictions. We'll be doing lots of stuff on fight weeks. But yeah, really looking forward to it. This is going to be a really great event, I think.
Definitely. I think it's such a big event for women's boxing as well. And in this country, Savannah Marshall can cement herself within the current crop of great British fighters that we've got. And she can go in as at this. I think this is a fight where she can take it from she's a great female boxer to she's just a great boxer with great power, and it won't be seen as, oh, you've got this certain cluster of men, then you've got Savannah Marshall, etc. It'll just be she's one of the best British boxers we've got at the present. Like we say, been fantastic to chat about it tonight. I think it's one of the few female fights where there's, like we say, it's genuine 50-50. There's so much to talk about. There's so much that can happen. Fight week, press conferences, weigh-ins on the night. It's absolutely brilliant. Again, Elliot, thank you for joining me tonight. And to anyone watching, like we say, there'll be plenty more content coming out, fight week previews. Likely we'll do a video after the weigh-in because, like we say, it's so important. Check out all our other videos on the YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook as well. And once again, Elliot, thank you for joining me tonight.
Cheers, Owen. Thanks, mate. See you soon.